Number 45 of the Inland Empire Workers' Compensation Lawyer live stream podcast. My name is Attorney Alexander Napolin. I'm joined by my co-host, Attorney George Abuado. And on this episode of the Inland Empire Workers' Compensation Lawyer live stream podcast, we're discussing vaccination injuries from vaccinations that happen as required by employment. So if you're out there and you're a worker in California and your employer requires that you get a vaccine and you're injured from that vaccine, you might be wondering, do I have a workers' compensation claim? Do I have any legal rights? And that's what we're discussing today. George, if someone's injured from a vaccine because their employer required them to have it, is that compensable? Does that get you workers' compensation?
Well, Alex, I think this is a great topic, and I'm excited about it because it's one of those issues where a lot of people just don't think about this, right? A lot of people that aren't well-versed in workers' compensation, and why would you be unless you went through the process, they might not even think that something that outside of the scope of their work might be a workers' compensation injury. Now, the reason I like this topic is because, and the reason we like to do these videos is because people that might not think about this might be ignoring injuries that are compensable. So the answer to your question is it compensable? Yes, it is. And I think that the reason it's compensable is so simple that people miss it, right? And maybe attorneys might miss it, or or an attorney that doesn't have the experience that an attorney that's been doing this for a while might miss it because it doesn't quickly tie into work, right? It ties into maybe what people might think of as a physical for pre-employment, and if they get hurt there, that's compensable as well. Right. So, but people are just thinking, hey, I just need to get this vaccine for work. I got it at a hospital. If I have adverse reaction, I might have some maybe recourse against the hospital, but it has nothing to do with work. Well, yes, it does, because your work required it.
Right.
So once again, this also has to do with the coming and going rule, which we discussed in our video. If your work requires you to do something and you are injured because of that requirement, then I would say broadly, generally, it's compensable. Would that be correct,
absolutely.
Alex?
Yeah, and that falls under just the basic logic that if your employer is requiring you to do something, that if you get injured doing that thing, even if it's something that's unrelated to your work, if it benefits your employer in some way, the law says that that is an injury that gets workers' compensation. You have to hire an Inland Empire workers' compensation lawyer and have them pursue your rights and fight for benefits. If you have a weird situation where your employer's requiring you to do something, maybe they're not paying you, but you're out doing it and you're injured, time to get a workers' compensation lawyer, because it may be that the insurance carrier is going to say, nah, I don't think so. See, the insurance adjuster, even though they have a duty under the labor code to find benefits and provide them, come on, let's be realistic.
Yeah, their job is not to. But today we're actually discussing something awesome, because it's requirement of getting vaccinated by your employer. And the reason it's great is because I can imagine there's been thousands, millions of people that this has happened to. And out of those, there has to have been some type of adverse reaction, right?
What happens in the healthcare field, where if you're a healthcare worker and you work in a hospital or something, employers require you to have all the standard vaccinations. So if you're going to get a vaccination, it could be that certain vaccination that we have, COVID vaccination. If you're injured because of that, and if you have an adverse reaction right there, workers' compensation, it's counted. And that goes back to a 1949 case where an employer was sued in civil court for requiring the employee to obtain a vaccination. And they had an adverse reaction to that vaccination, and the civil court dismissed it, said, nope, this is workers' compensation. And since that day, that's been the law.
Yeah, and I know attorneys that are old enough to remember that. I mean, I think they got their bar card in 1920s, 1930s.
Hey, lawyers hang around a long time.
They do.
They keep practicing forever.
You probably know one that's 150 years old, and you'll never know it.
Yeah, so workers' comp covers vaccination injuries. So if you're out there and you've had the COVID vaccination, you had an adverse reaction, you have permanent issues, that could be neuralgia, you could have nerve issues, you could have other internal issues that are going on, immune issues, heart issues, and you had that vaccine because your employer required you to have it. whether or not you're in the medical field, you're in healthcare or not, you have workers' compensation rights. Now, it just so happens that the majority of vaccination injuries don't last for more than a week. So maybe someone would get sick. You're out there, you got sick, you were out of work for a week. Workers' compensation isn't going to really cover anything where someone's out for 3 days. So you have to be absent for more than 3 days to get benefits. And if it's just state disability, you got to be absent for more than 7 days. Yeah.
But I think that this topic is important, Alex, because people have rights, right? People have rights in this country. And I think that the best known rights are, 1 and 2. Freedom of speech, right to bear arms. And those are very talked about. But when it comes to workers' compensation, if you haven't gone through the process and you don't know what to look for, you don't know what rights you have. Some people might know a little bit more than the First and the Second Amendment, but they don't know what rights they have in a specific area of law. So if you're feeling any pain, if you're feeling any type of discomfort, if you're having an issue, whether it's a body issue or you just don't know where it came from, but you think it might be work related. Hey, listen, you know how much it costs to give us a call? $0. It's free for you. Give us a call. We'll look at your case on a case-by-case basis, and we'll let you know what rights you have, if you have any. Yeah. And then the answer will be, you'll have the answer. You won't have to look for answers.
It could be anything. Like, let's say your husband or wife has a stroke, and they've been stressed out at work. Time to call George Abuado and get a free consultation.
Yeah.
So we can talk to you about what they're going to do to try to deny that claim and what we need, what medical evidence we need to look for to see if we can prove that that's linked to the job.
Yeah. Last thing, just piggybacking off of that, Alex, if your loved one, husband, father, whatever the case might be, mother, sister, whatever, has passed away and it could be related to work, you definitely want to give us a call because they had rights and you have rights as dependents. Right. And we discussed those a little bit in prior videos. But sometimes people feel like, well, there's nothing we can do. The person's already passed away. No, give us a call. We'll let you know if there's anything that can be done. And I think that's very important for our viewers.
That goes for deaths that are related to vaccination if they're out there.
Yeah.
And just any type of medical treatment, whether that be preventative medicine or curative medicines that your employer requires, if you're injured in the scope of obtaining that, or if that medication injures you, you have workers' compensation rights against your employer. You cannot sue your employer for negligence, and you cannot sue your employer if they're if your employer is giving you the vaccination. So this happens. So if you're out there and you work for a hospital and they're actually administering the vaccination to you, the question could become, did they negligently vaccinate you or administer it to the extent that you were injured? Can you sue them for medical malpractice? But I think that the labor code specifically states that you cannot do that. Your workers' comp is the sole remedy.
Wow. Okay.
So, it limits you down. But as we discussed in our last episode about how affordable it is to hire a workers' comp lawyer, how you don't have to pay any of your medical bills out of the settlement, and how, hey, if you get hit by someone who's out on the road without insurance, maybe you don't have any recourse at all. At least when you get hurt at your employment, you know that there's insurance that's going to pay. It's going to be a safety net for you. It should be paying. If it's not paying, you need to dial our injury helpline. That's 844-984-8414. Speak to George Abuado or myself about what to do next. It's probably going to be hiring an attorney, but it might not be. You need to talk to a lawyer to make that decision. That's why this is not legal advice.
Yeah, and
it's just general information.
Alex, you just mentioned that workers' comp is the only legal recourse for something like the scenario that you just said, right? But hey, we've discussed this before. What if the hospital was negligent, or it was a serious and willful that you could tack on to the work comp injury?
Right.
So some attorneys might not even provide you with the answers you need regarding a vaccination at work, and the real experienced attorneys might even pull out an extra fact from there saying, hey, this company did this in a manner that was not safe. They knew it wasn't safe, or maybe somehow it was serious and willful, and can get you more compensation for that vaccination.
Giving you vaccinations in the basement with dirty needles?
Dirty needles. I mean, it happens. It happens.
Could it be a serious and willful? You'd have to see how far up the chain it went. If it's just that employee, we've discussed serious and willful on this channel. We'll put a link to that video below if you think that there's some nefarious activity going on where your employer is intentionally or almost seems to be recklessly endangering you. that could rise to the level to get you more compensation.
Yeah.
So that forcing you to get a vaccination, you know, I thought about, is that a serious and willful? But no, I don't think so. I think that that the likelihood of injury so low that that I think that the mandate would probably a requirement. But they do have to give employers who have to give religious and other exceptions. So if you're out there and you don't want to take the vaccination, that's another question. We're really speaking to people who have already taken the vaccination and have been injured, or have taken some other preventative medicine, like another type of vaccination. I think there's cases on getting tuberculosis testing, any type of drug test or any type of thing where they're sticking a needle in you and you get injured.
Yeah.
Work related. If it was a spouse or a sibling or someone who you know, you make sure you tell them, hey, I saw this video. George Abuado and Mr. Napolin told me.
Yes, sir. Great. Well, any questions? We're always here to answer. And I think this was a great video, Alex. Thank you for bringing this topic.
We're here in the chat. And, if you're out there, there are people out there, like there are millions who got the vaccination. Mm-hmm. And there are thousands who have been injured. And it's just coming out now. Okay, because people are now kind of waking up and saying, hey, I actually have a permanent injury. These people exist.
Yeah.
Okay, that includes episode number 45 of the Inland Empire Workers' Compensation Lawyer live stream podcast. Remember, it's general information only. It's educational. It's meant to help you, but it's not legal advice. If you need legal advice, dial our injury helpline at 844-984-8414.